Pissing our pants yet?
Guys, it's the Air Lord here, and welcome to perhaps one of the last vlogs for Season 7 of The Walking Dead. This is a vlog that pertains to Season 7. I guess I'll start calling Season 8 vlogs that pertain to future predictions. I know I'll probably make a new intro. Obviously, the intro I'm using right now where you have the Negan kill, and then there's the football, and then it goes on to the let's go to war. I'm obviously going to make an entirely new intro for Season 7. Every season / half season, I'll make some sort of new intro to depict what those episodes entail. So yeah, if anyone was wondering in terms of my intros, it's just like how The Walking Dead does it. The intros change with the theme and the actors of that season, and the credits and the B-roll credits in the beginning will depict that. So anyway, to get on to the topic of this video, this is something I wanted to talk about for a long damn time. Whenever I've been seeing this topic spring up in a lot of other videos, and a lot of people have been not asking me to do it, but I've always been prompted to do the video whenever I've seen certain comments ranging from Walking Dead related videos of people who have just uploaded episodes or clips from an episode, reviews, Facebook chat forums, anything where people are discussing The Walking Dead in a social fashion, any social media pertaining to discussing the intricacies of The Walking Dead. Now, what I'm referring to, obviously, as the title usually spoils these types of videos, and what I'm going to say, this is my, I don't want to say rant, but defense of the show, because there is a large consensus of people out there, I'd say, who do not like Season 7 of The Walking Dead, and I guess don't like the show overall as of right now. And I'm trying to understand why. Now, I've addressed some of these reasons in the past when people have said, oh, some episodes are really slow, there's no action, I don't like seeing the characters so distraught, bunch of reasons. But I've just seen a lot of hatred for this show, a lot of hatred. And this is even after the Season 7 finale, which was, in my opinion, a pretty damn good finale, and probably the best finale that The Walking Dead has ever had. If you compare past season finales, this is probably the best one. And I went through every season finale that they've had, and I've got to say, like, this is the best one. It was the most rewarding. It was extended. You didn't have any bullshit cliffhangers. It told the story start to finish. It was good. It did what it set out to do, and I enjoyed it. I don't understand why people still, after a finale that delivered some action, some twists, some deaths, and emotions, people are still shitting on this season and shitting on this show. I'm not going to say that people, have short attention spans and don't want to put time into watching the show. I'm not going to make this some kind of an attack on people, because obviously everyone watches the show and enjoys the show in a different way. I understand that. I recognize that. I watch the show for a bunch of different reasons, as I've said. I like certain things from the comics, the storylines. I love the thematic element of survival in a world where there's seemingly no reason to survive. I identify with the characters. I love the action sequence. I think the story twists and turns and changes every episode. You're getting something different, and I say this, you get something different every 8 episodes. And Scott Gimple has said this. Every 8 episodes of The Walking Dead, something different is offered to you. There's a different theme. The first half of Season 7, for example, was the low point, the lowest point of our characters. Ever since Negan killed off 2 of the main cast, it's showing you the lowest point that our characters have sunk to from that tragic event. The second half of Season 7 was them regaining their confidence after the stakes were set up so high in the season 7 premiere. Now we start to see how they rise up, as was the tagline for the second half. How they rise up and they fight back, and they did in a huge way in the season 7 finale. And now the first half of season 8 is going to be all-out war, which is going to be a big, big conflict. I don't know if all-out war is going to span the entire season of season 8. It could. It very well could. I don't know. That's questions that will be answered in another vlog, another day, another time. But for season 7, that's been the theme of season 7. Season 6 was about the possibility of there being a larger world. The first half was the Alexandrians adapting to the way of the apocalypse and showing some, balls and cojones. And then the second half of season 6 was the characters realizing that there's a larger world, there's more communities, and there's more things going on out in the world than they thought there was, than just Alexandria and their isolated community. So every 8 episodes is different, and I think that's unique for a show. A show that's going into its 100th episode, I think that's unique for it to do. Now, one thing I've never addressed on this channel before, and one reason why people don't like the show, and I was actually talking to my brother about this, and he said this was one reason he doesn't like watching the show. It's because there's seemingly no end goal in mind. Now, any TV show that is out there currently, there's some end goal. Even in a season, there's an end goal to what the mission is. If you take a show like Game of Thrones only has 2 seasons left, season 7 and 8. And we know that the penultimate goal is to defeat the White Walkers and save the 7 kingdoms, even though everyone has their different goals of who wants to rule the 7 kingdoms. The overall goal of Game of Thrones is to stop the White Walkers and ensure that, no one gets humanity doesn't get annihilated by these frozen ice monsters. And it's also a tale of, how the war originally started with Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark and all that stuff. I'm not going to go into Game of Thrones lore here, but Game of Thrones has a finite, even though it's 7, 8 seasons, it has a finite journey. Same could be said with even a show I just watched recently, Stranger Things. In one season, the main plot line was Will was captured by the Demogorgon, which is the name of the monster, and the whole show is about these kids, police, siblings, all trying to understand this mysterious upside down, these sci-fi aspects, and to ultimately rescue the kid by the end of the season. And just save the people who have been captured by this crazy world and all of the mysteries and intricacies of that world. So you could say in just one season, if they never continued Stranger Things after, I know there's a season 2, but if they never continued it, one season deals with end goals and it sets up stakes and everything. For The Walking Dead, obviously that's not necessarily the case. The zombie apocalypse is always going on, and unless, like a lot of zombie shows and a lot of zombie movies, if there's a cure, that instantly solves the problem and would put the big finale on the show. If there's a cure, in a way it says to you, okay, well, the zombie threat's gone. No more zombies. I mean, humans might be barbarians and attacking each other, as we are seeing with all-out war, but still there's a cure and there's a solution to the immediate problem, okay? Now, Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead, doesn't really like this. The whole point of The Walking Dead originally was that it's a show that follows survivors after the apocalypse. It's not World War Z, where you see how it broke out and then there's a cure and everything's fine and blah, blah, blah. There's no Brad Pitt walking out of a, meat cellar with a bunch of syringes and all these zombies run past him as he drinks Coca-Cola for a minute for his sponsors. That's not what The Walking Dead is. It's not a World War Z movie. It's influenced by older zombie TV shows, Night of the Living Dead, George Romero stuff. Zombies are slower, and Kirkman, again, really wanted to show what happens after the apocalypse and deal with the psychosis and the psychological analysis of characters beyond in a post-apocalyptic environment. For me, I identify a lot with the show because it, to me, feels like it's characters living their everyday lives. Just like if it was a normal TV show where it's set in our world, the average 21st century, go to a 9-to-5 job and, the usual crap. A show like The Office or something, it's kind of like a show where it's set in a normal reality, but it's dealing with the psychological nature of those people in that everyday society. The Walking Dead has basically normalized the zombie apocalypse to the point where the zombie apocalypse is the normality, is basically like the normal everyday life, and that normalcy is set within its viewers. People say, okay, we've been with the zombie apocalypse for 6-7 seasons now. We expect this. Now what we need to see is how characters react to that, how characters survive in that, the villains, the people who go a little bit crazy, what ways do people react, how are zombies handled, that kind of thing, okay? So this is the way in which I see The Walking Dead as a TV show. And I think that's the longevity factor of it, and why at the present moment it doesn't have a finality. It doesn't have a finite ending. It has been said by Kirkman and Gimple that it will end eventually. It will end, but at the moment, I understand that it's a really popular TV show, and I know to an extent AMC wants to milk the cash cow, and they want to drag this out, but as it stands, the show follows the comic book, and the comic book is still going on. We're on issue 166, 167 of the comics, and the All Out War segment is covering, like issues 120, 125, 130. So the Walking Dead show is only 30 or so issues behind the comics. I'm interested to see by the end of season 8 into season 9 if the show will begin to catch up with the comic books, because the comics only releases one issue every month, and they're not very long, and they only go through little chunks of story. So I'm interested, because Kirkman has said he doesn't want the show to surpass the comics, but can he stay true to that promise? I don't know. Obviously, George R.R. Martin has not, in terms of Game of Thrones. The show has lapped his fucking books that he still refuses to publish, which I know is because of his age, his health, other things he has going on. I'm not blaming the guy, but I understand that Kirkman does not want that to happen. He actually made a statement where he publicly said he doesn't think it's right that George R.R. Martin is letting Game of Thrones surpass his books, but he retracted the comment. But I know that's a very important issue to Kirkman, that the comics are beyond the show, but the show's kind of starting to catch up in a way. Like, if the show is covering the All Out War segment, All Out War was written in the comic books, I'd say, late 2012, 2013. So during the time period that the show was dealing with the governor, that was when All Out War was being written in the comics. So I don't know, I'd say that it's hard to compare in years, but I'd say a year or two the show will catch up to where the comics is now. But yeah, not to go off on that contingency, I'm just trying to piece together different reasons why people have said that they don't like the show. But because the characters and how they go through experiences, they evolve and adapt and change, and because they're always interchanging and learning and changing through each other, that community aspect keeps me interested. Like, if these characters weren't interested, obviously I wouldn't be dealing with the show. But because Negan's a really interesting villain and unique, and Rick has this insane will to survive and is just a very strong and pragmatic leader, I'm just gripped by it, and I love to see it. I think the action's great. I think the makeup and effects they do with the zombies is outstanding. Yeah, every once in a while I do get frustrated by some slower episodes. I'll say that. And commercials too. But that's the nature of the devil. It's on AMC. You're gonna have commercials. Obviously, with shows like Stranger Things and Game of Thrones, you don't have commercials because they're on Netflix and HBO, where commercials don't exist. So, it's just the fact that it's on AMC. AMC is the big daddy. They own Walking Dead, and that's the way it is. I know there was possibilities it would have been on other networks, but what do you know? Those other networks actually denied them. HBO didn't want The Walking Dead because, you'll never believe this, they thought The Walking Dead was too violent. Wow. People who've seen Game of Thrones are probably like, what, are you insane? There are some parts of Game of Thrones that are way more violent than Walking Dead, and I agree. So, I don't know. I mean, if it was on HBO, there would have been more violence, probably some sex, probably Negan would be able to say every F word imaginable, and there'd be no censorship. I know. The censorship pisses me off. That is one thing. I do hate the whole censorship thing. And I've made videos on this before, how I don't like that Negan can't say the F word. I don't like that, in a word, and because the Walking Dead world is so raw. It's raw. It's society after a collapse. There's no censorship. There's no protecting people because the world is so raw and so violent. That's always prevalent. So to censor people and for people not to swear is just ridiculous. In the comics, people say the F word all the time. They say fuck all the time. And it's not just Negan, it's other characters too. So to think otherwise is just preposterous. So anyway, not to go off on too big of a tangent, I'm just trying to wrap my head around why people don't like Season 7, all right? By the end of Season 7, it's rewarding. If you see on AMC's YouTube channel right now, there's a video wrapping up Season 7, and I think Scott Gimple says it very well in that video. He says that in order for that final battle to feel worthwhile, for it to feel climactic and to feel the way it did, it's because all of these different characters had to go through their own inner demons and had to fight their own monsters, whether they're monsters outside the world or inside themselves. They had to fight those in order to get to the point in this finale where they were at all kicking ass together and fighting back the saviors and the scavengers. If they hadn't put that in, would it have been as rewarding to watch that big climactic battle? Like, we need to give a shit about these characters before you get to the point where they're all shooting at each other, blowing shit up. Like, I know people like the action, but it needs to be balanced in between the other moments. And again, I say The Walking Dead has done that well. I do think there are some times where they can improve it by not leaving off these commercial cliffhangers and not having, slower episodes where we're just kind of stuck in the mundane. Episode 15 of Season 7 was a perfect example of an episode done right, where we had many different locations. We had the hilltop, the sanctuary, our group of survivors at the ocean side, and the way it was cut and the way each story was told, you still got a lot of information. You still got the character development, but we didn't feel like we were stuck in the mundane too much. Episode 15 is a great example of how episodes should be done, of just showing the mundane, but showing it in a way that we're interested and intrigued all the way through. So we're not just staying with one character, walking around and having, frivolous conversations that don't really move us in any direction. That I understand. There were some times in, Go-Getters in Season 7, with some of the Carl and Enid crap when they were roller skating. Like, I know some of that stuff is lame. I get it. Even some of the Oceanside stuff was slow. Even, we were learning about that community for the first time. But Season 7 threw a lot at us. We were introduced to so many new places all at once. The Kingdom, completely new. Learned about it in one season. Oceanside, completely new. Learned about it in one season. The Sanctuary, to some extent, even though we had seen the Saviors in Season 6, saw the satellite outpost, we had never seen the Sanctuary. We never saw Negan's main base. So in a way, they were introducing that community for the first time and learning about that in full effect. And even to some extent, like, we saw the hilltop, but we still didn't know too much about it, so we had some episodes dealing with that. So there were a lot of different places that needed explaining. There were Lenny James, who plays Morgan, said this, that they're expanding the canvas upon which they tell their story. And that requires time dealt with, given to the episodes. And I think this season had the most 90-minute episodes. Like, if you think to yourself, episode 4 had it, episode 7, 8 had it, and then I'm trying to think if any other episodes did. Then the finale did. So 4 episodes out of a 16-episode season. So that's almost an extra episode entirely, if you're adding up all of that time. And not to mention, some episodes had extended time. Like, they had an extra 9 minutes, an extra 10 minutes tagged on to the last part of that. So we had more content. And I think it's simply because of what was needed for the storytelling in this season. They're just all of these places needed time to have depth given to them. And the saviors being the big bad apples of this story, linking these communities together, because they've affected all of these communities, and they're the big bad apple that everyone's trying to fight. So that theme keeps it fresh. There's still a big villain out there, a villain we've never faced. Even the governor had a very small force. He was mentally unstable. this is something completely different. So I'm just, every time I go on a video, I just keep seeing comments of people bitching about the show. Like, oh, I hate this about the show, and I hate that about the show, and this is the worst season. Season 7's boring. I'm not watching the show. Well, first of all, people who say that usually come back, especially with this being the 100th episode, the Season 8 premiere. Nobody who says that's not going to watch the fucking show, especially if it's going to be a huge battle and blow explosions and all the shit that the fucking the fair weather fans watch. The people who just watch for the explosions and the gunshots and the traumatic deaths. That's all going to be in the premiere. So I'm just a little fed up with people complaining about the show. Sometimes on the comments on my videos and the comments of other videos that I see. It's to a point where it's kind of ridiculous. Like, I've heard your plights. Like, it's just trollish at this point. You're free to express your opinion and give facts, obviously. I always welcome that. But I just think that it's too much. The show did a lot in season 7, and you have to give the show a lot of credit. It never gets credit. It never gets SGA awards. It never gets Emmys. Like, it always gets snubbed. It'll get awards for makeups and prosthetics, but it'll never get that extra level of recognition I always think it should get. And it's stupid because actors like Andrew Lincoln, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, they pour their souls into this work. They've been on this show. Andrew Lincoln on this show for 6-7 years. His acting is outstanding. I don't understand why that guy's not getting more recognition for his talents. It's a crime. He is just as good, if not better, than actors like Bryan Cranston, Peter Dinklage. Like, he is phenomenal. That's why Andrew Lincoln, just as an actor in himself, and some of the performances he's shown on The Walking Dead, being able to have a multi-faced character of just, this insane progression that's another big reason I stay with the show. Those actors and that cast and crew is dedicated to that show, and they love what they do, and I love what they do. When you have a cast that cares that much about a show, you can't help but be sucked into it. If the cast was just kind of like, oh, another day on the job, and oh, it's really hot out here in Georgia, and I'm kind of tired, I've been on this show for years, you would be like, oh, the energy just gets sucked out of it. But because these actors are always approaching this show as if it's the first season, and they're always fresh, and they're always ready, and they're always excited. They go to these Walker Stalker cons, meet fans. It's a really tight community. That's why I love it, man. It's a fandom. It's almost like a Star Wars fandom. The Walking Dead is its own fandom, and that's why I love the show. That's why I love doing these videos. That's why I love doing these vlogs. And that's why I don't understand why people don't see the bigger picture. Just because there's a few episodes that aren't as good or suck. Hey, I do episode ratings every time. I give you a 1 to 10 score. And sometimes I might be a little biased, but still, there are some episodes I like more than others. I'm not going to deny there are some shitty episodes, but every episode moves towards a bigger picture. That's what you got to remember. And the show will have a finite conclusion at some point, but we don't know what that is yet. It's still being produced. So hold your pants on, be patient. I know that's hard to do in this instantaneous gimme, gimme, gimme culture that we're in the 21st century, but you got to be patient. We're going to get there eventually. So thank you guys for watching. This has been my Season 7, what the F, why do you hate the season video. Thank you guys for watching. Post comments below, and I'll talk to you guys later. See you later.